Hello there, dear viewers. You may recall that my Sunrise on the Reaping analysis video began with the reading of a Tumblr post which related to the general theme of the video. And I imagine you may now be fearing that this video will also begin in the same way. And I would like to reassure you that this video will not begin with me reading to you a Tumblr post which relates to the theme of this video. I will be reading too. Tumblr user Good Ol' Reliable Jake said, "Fantasy races are an uncomfortable concept because they present a world that literally works the way racists think the world works. The attempts to mitigate this problem often fail to address the core concern, merely making the idea more palatable. A big example is trying to correct by changing the language from races to species. This attempt fails for two reasons. 1. Exactly. Racists think that people of other races are a different species. That's the foundation of race science, phrenology, all of it. 2. Are demi-humans different species, though? Like, the interactions between elves and dwarves don't resemble the interactions between different species in our world. They don't act like snakes and lemurs, or whales and krill, or even cats and dogs. More often, we've got different groups of people who may speak different languages and have different cultural practices, engaging in diplomacy or war and struggling to coexist. In practice, they are treated as nations, ethnicities, except they're ethnicities who are biologically distinct enough to have objective differences in ability. This is something that puts me on edge in Mass Effect, otherwise one of my favorite games. True, the game ultimately lands on condemning the genophage. And it's not subtle about that. I mean, just look at the name. But it's still considered debatable, morally gray, and Mordin Solus remains one of the most charming and enduring heroes of the series. The setting has bent over backwards to make every racist stereotype and talking point as legitimate as possible. In this setting, it is objectively true, scientifically proven, that it is in the DNA of Krogans to naturally be violent, warmongering killing machines whose explosively rapid breeding poses an existential threat to the galaxy. That, in turn, is meant to make us think that maybe forced sterilization is something worth considering. It's hard to ignore the parallels to real-life racist propaganda. I don't think it's malicious, just ungrounded and thoughtless. The results of creators to whom these ideals are abstract thought experiments rather than reflections of real history. So, the Tumblr user continues, do I think we need to cancel Mass Effect or stop playing D&D or telling stories about Drow? No, not really. I mean, I do all these things. Truth is, I don't have an actionable solution for myself or anyone, but the dynamic is clearly present and worth describing." Well, that was a lovely Tumblr post. Keep that one in mind. I will now move on to the other post, which is jarringly contradictory. Tumblr user with a username I don't think I can say here, but it is the D word, which is exclusive to lesbians, and puffs. So it's D word puffs is their username. That Tumblr user says, "There is a really frustrating thing where some kinds of speculative story are hard to write because they will be assumed to be bad, clumsy, harmful, regressive metaphors for real-world events or people rather than exploring completely speculative ideas. Like, what if a small group of religious extremists persecuted in their own country moved to an inhospitable, uninhabited island and had to rebuild society there? But the Americas and Australia weren't inhospitable and were full of native nations. Why are you perpetuating the idea of terra nullius and manifest destiny?" Yes, that's because this isn't a metaphor for the British invading other countries, it's a metaphor for finding out how much of a person's religious practice is rooted in worldly concerns. It almost feels like death of the author, like death of the most obvious metaphor. If you couldn't reach for the tormented parallel between being an alien species and being stateless, what stories could someone tell? If your changeling baby was neither disabled nor adopted, what would the story be about? Etc. Okay, you got all that? You swallowed both ideas? Cool, now let's talk about the Percy Jackson Disney Plus show. Greetings and salutations, beautiful humans. This is the Amity Elf, and I know what you're thinking. The Amity Elf, you did Tyson dirty. Yeah, I did. Listen. The Amity Elf is doing her best, okay? The Amity Elf is doing her best. Needless to say, season 2 of the Percy Jackson TV show is out, and it's incredible. Okay, that's an opinion, but like all the people I've seen have disagreeing statements have said things that I found to be not worth my consideration. Now, that's not saying that there are no people who have good reasons to dislike the Percy Jackson Disney Plus show, but a lot of the reasons I have seen have been spurious in my opinion.
We can still say the first episode was called Dodgeball something and they didn't play dodgeball. Let's
and we can complain about the bubble. There was no bubble in the Sirens. We can complain about that. We can complain about it.
Now, those of you who have watched season 2 of the Percy Jackson Disney Plus show are probably either thinking, oh, I completely understand how that relates to the 2 Tumblr posts you read to us moments ago, or you're thinking, what does that have to do with the 2 Tumblr posts you read to us moments ago? What I have just done, if expressed as a logical formula, is I have said either A or not A, which is always true. It's always true. It's straight up cheating. There's a lot to discuss about season 2, from the fact that it has the same budget apparently as season 1, but everyone keeps remarking on what an improvement it is. Overall, I loved season 1, so seeing so many people be like, oh man, season 2 is way better, thank goodness, season 1 was terrible. I'm just kind of like, what are you talking about? We all liked season 1. There are the minor narrative changes that they threw in there. They don't go to the school in the first episode. They don't literally play dodgeball. They get to see Luke poison Thalia's tree. Chiron is already banished when they arrive. Cersei's Island almost full stop. I really love how they executed that. It was just so tight. And I would say that most of those changes fall into the deadline has already passed category of change, where when it initially happened, I was like, yo, what are you doing? And then once it resolved, I was like, actually, that's awesome. That's sick. I love that you did that. One thing that especially stood out to me in season 2, though, is the way that Tyson, being a Cyclops, was treated in comparison to how it was treated in the books. In the books, characters such as Luke Castellan and Annabeth Chase were very explicitly Cyclops racist. There was a kerfuffle back when they were on the run, a situation where basically some Cyclopes attacked them. By the way, I pronounce it Cyclopes. People, the show keeps saying like Cyclopses or Cyclops as the plural. I say Cyclopes. I think maybe that the audiobook for Sea of Monsters said Cyclopes or something like that. I don't know. I got Cyclopes, and I've been saying Cyclopes since I read the Percy Jackson books as a child. So now that people aren't saying Cyclopes, it throws me off. But it's not important. It's not a big deal. When Annabeth and Thalia and Luke were on the run, they ran afoul of some Cyclopes who wanted to kill them, and this situation ultimately led to Thalia dying. They didn't directly kill Thalia, but they were part of it. As a result, Annabeth is actively and pretty constantly hostile to Tyson. Luke is hostile about Tyson. Basically, the situation in the books is some characters are prejudiced against Cyclopes, and that's treated in the books as a thing you can just be. The show plays this very differently, which I find interesting. In the show, instead of doing any of the school section, they kind of just have Annabeth come upon Percy and Tyson as they're on their way to school, and she goes, hey, get away from Percy, you Cyclops. But her interactions with Tyson after that are more exasperated and shut off than hateful. She's careful about Tyson. She's not mean to Tyson, which still isn't great for the social dynamics. Like, they still have something to overcome there. But the show incorporates a lot of little moments where it is sort of indicated to the viewer that being racist against Cyclopes isn't something you can just, like, that's not something you can just be. That's not a quirky character trait you can just kind of have. These are people. Stop prejudging them just because some Cyclopes kill people. Not all of them do. Some of them make little trinkets and are Sally Jackson's son now. Also, love that they just kind of let him into their home. Love that. Instead of just being like, oh yeah, Tyson, he's my homeless friend. Nah, Sally Jackson moved him in. Sally Jackson's calling that boy her son. It makes Sally's kindness and goodness more of a show don't tell thing, which I love. The books are always like, yo, my mom's the nicest person in the world, which, fine, Percy's point of view. And also, Book Sally probably doesn't have the means to support Tyson. We're to assume that, like, her life doesn't really lend itself super well to that kind of altruism. But in the show, we get to see a version of Sally who's like, hey, Tyson needs a home, I'm providing a home for Tyson. That's great. I like that a lot. Oh, when I said that the show treats Tyson being a Cyclops differently than the books did, you're probably thinking that I meant that in the books, Percy didn't know he was a Cyclops until Annabeth told him, because for some reason the Mist was like really working on him about that. Yeah, I don't actually care. That one I don't care about. That change isn't interesting to me at all. I mentioned there are moments where it is clarified that you can't just be racist against Cyclopes. The first one that comes to mind happens in episode 1, pretty early on. Percy and Tyson are having a little still walk and talk, Percy kind of offhandedly refers to Tyson as a monster. In the books, that would be a pretty casual thing. Like, classification-wise, Tyson is considered a monster. But show Percy is like, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be calling you a monster, that's not right. And me, the Amity Elf, the person watching episode 1 weeks ago, I looked up and went, huh, interesting. And initially, didn't really like it very much. My initial response to a lot of the legitimization of Tyson's race was kind of negative. In the books, it is held to be true that there is an insurmountable inherent difference between Cyclopes and demigods. One imagines that remains true in the show to some extent because we're not acting like Tyson could be the child of the prophecy. Tyson's not a half-blood. We are in agreement that Tyson isn't a half-blood of the eldest gods. He's a Cyclops. That's a different thing. Good. Glad that we're not putting him in consideration for the prophecy. Sorry, Tyson. I just kind of don't want you in the running. Those of you who watched season 2 of the show may already be expecting me to say this, but the first Princess Andromeda episode is the one that really made me start mulling over the matter of Tyson being a Cyclops, Cyclopes being monsters, monsters being treated differently than demigods are. It's weird that the show is doing this. It's weird. To better illustrate what I mean, let's go through the scene in question, and I'll give an overview of the points of interest. Luke, after having had a weird tete-a-tete with Percy and Annabeth, hurting Annabeth's feelings, hurting Percy's feelings, he takes them into the little bowels of the ship. I don't think it's really the brig, it's just kind of the bowels of the ship somewhere, and he shows them where everybody's training to be evil and stuff, like they're hacking at mannequins or whatever. And it's a mix of demigods and monsters walking around, and Annabeth comments on that yo, it's demigods and it's monsters. She doesn't say yo. I don't know why I said yo. I don't know when that became a thing that I say. And Luke says, oh, we don't use that word here. Monsters? No, we don't use that word. We're all children of the gods. And that's where I kind of go, are we doing that thing where we take the general cadence of liberal talking points and giving that to the villains? Maybe communist, honestly. It's what a child would understand about communism. And then it's giving that to the villains. It's a Black Panther situation. We know that Killmonger was wrong because he was killing innocent people, but there were writers who decided to give him the talking points he did while he killed innocent people. Even better example than Killmonger, Carly Morgenthau from Falcon and Winter Soldier, she was just straight up cool for most of it, and then she started killing innocent people just to remind you that we can't let her win. And I'm like, well, okay, hold on. We don't know these people, right? Maybe they suck. Basically, we have Luke expressing this kind of, we're all equal, we're all valid, they've created these divisions between us to make us weaker. Those talking points come across as very liberal, very leftist, very communist. I'm saying those things as if they're the same. They're different, but if you're, again, it's a kid's show. It's putting on the aesthetics of left movements, it's putting on the verbiage of left movements, and it's giving that to the villains while they're training by killing mannequins wearing Camp Half-Blood t-shirts. Luke points out that Tyson is a son of Poseidon, in the context of we're all children of the gods, hey, we don't say monsters, we're all equal here. And, well, first of all, you haven't made Kelly the Empausa a character yet, which means you don't have any monsters in your leadership, which means you can't act like you have equality here. There is a hierarchy in which demigods are on top. You are liars. Listen, when Kelly the Empausa shows up, you can argue that you have representation in your leadership, but at present, maybe that's, oh no, is Kelly the Empausa gonna be treated as a DEI hire? Oh no. This is the give and take. They'll give us Black Annabeth, but they will also nip on the corner of the crust of the bread of villainizing progressiveness. I know what you're thinking. We're gonna get there. Right now we're watching this scene.
He gets treated like an outcast just because his mother wasn't human.
It's wrong to treat Tyson as an outcast just because his mom isn't human. Hey, speaking of moms, Luke, want to talk about yours? I'm sorry. I can't wait for May Kesta. I don't want any comedy in that scene. I want it to be soul-crushing. Basically, Luke is like, hey, people are racist against monsters, and that's not cool. The scene terminates when Tyson builds a bomb to escape, but after that, they have a discussion about it where it's like, hey, Tyson, were you okay with those Lystrogonian giants? And he's like, yeah, they were really nice to me. I only did the bomb thing to escape because you guys were in danger. I was kind of having fun. It was good for me there. Now, here's the thing. There was a moment in the books that already made me uncomfortable. I don't think it made me uncomfortable the first time I read it, but when I reread Sea of Monsters in preparation for season 2, honestly, it might have made me uncomfortable when I first read it, but it definitely made me uncomfortable when I reread it. There's a scene towards the end, Polyphemus, the Cyclops, has kidnapped Grover. We have to go to Polyphemus. When we get to Polyphemus and Tyson arrives to kind of, save the day, help us escape Polyphemus, Polyphemus is reaching out to Tyson like, hey, Cyclops, I consider you a brother because we're both Cyclopes. Don't be on the side of these demigods. They've brainwashed you, basically. Tyson's like, hey, they didn't brainwash me. You're bad because you've been killing people. So we have made Tyson a traitor to his race. And yeah, in the context of the story that we're telling, that's good, because the demigods are, pretty empirically the good guys in this situation. Polyphemus is murdering people. I don't know how much I would call it Rick Riordan's fault that in that scene, Tyson reads to me as, for example, the Black Republicans Key and Peele sketch.
We're not a monolith!
This is an area in which Percy Jackson does worlds better than Harry Potter or the Shadowhunter Chronicles, because we at least don't see the demigods oppressing Cyclopes. The demigods do not oppress monsters. The demigods are just trying to live their lives, and they are constantly getting killed by monsters. There is no government of demigods that monsters are excluded from. Or actually, honestly, Camp Jupiter might be doing that, but Camp Jupiter was the Confederacy anyway, so. If the Percy Jackson series was doing a more Harry Potter Shadowhunters thing, then the vibes of the Tyson versus Polyphemus situation would be way worse, because then it's like, oh yeah, I was adopted into this privileged family, so I'm going to act in the name of their privilege at the expense of people who I would have been just like if I hadn't been adopted into this family. It's rough. Fortunately, we don't have quite the same oppression theming around monsters in the Percy Jackson series. There is racism in the prejudice sense against monsters, as we see exhibited towards Tyson as a Cyclops, but there is not racism in the systemic sense against monsters in the Percy Jackson series. Hey, the movie Wicked? The musical Wicked and the movie musical Wicked and the animals in Wicked? They shouldn't have been a racism allegory, should they? They definitely should have been a disability allegory. They went with a racism allegory for sure, but the racism allegory should definitely be alphabet, and the allegory for the animals should be disability. Our goat friend Dr. Dillamond has to use a special mug in order to drink because his hooves aren't made for the kind of mugs that humans use. Being an animal in Oz means you need things to be structured differently in order for you to use and access them. Sometimes it means that you can't pronounce your student's name in the way that she wants you to pronounce it. It's weird that they went with race as the allegory for that. In this case, is it fair to say that the monsters thing is a racial allegory? I actually went to school with Rachel Allegory.
Actually, I went to college with Rachel Hegemony.
Demigods have no systemic privilege over monsters that I'm aware of. I guess there's the fact that they're not allowed in Camp Half-Blood. Camp Half-Blood is a safe place where you won't be attacked by the kind of monsters who want to attack people. A demigod is able to get right into Camp Half-Blood because they need it. A monster can't get in. But then we run into that trope where there's always a reason for bigotry. The Zootopia and Detroit Become Human issue. Oh, the prey are prejudiced against the predators because predators used to eat them. The humans are prejudiced against androids because they made androids in a factory, and the androids were never intended to be people, and indeed shouldn't be. Sorry, Marcus, you are hot, but if the PS4 started saying, yo, give me voting rights, I would kind of be like, I don't know, man, you're a PS4. In this case, there is a valid reason to be like, oh, we keep getting killed by Cyclopes, so we've created this space that Cyclopes can't get in, but Cyclopes are also getting killed by Cyclopes a lot, so they also need to be in the space. What do we do with that? Do we have to take this 100% literally? Do we have to let go of the maybe it's about racism ball and say, actually, it is about monsters? Because it definitely gets easier to deal with the show through a non-allegorical lens, but even if we do that, even if we take the narrative of the show as completely non-allegorical, this isn't about race, it's not about disability, it's not about any of that, even if we do that, we do still kind of have to look at the fact that the things Luke is saying and the ways that he is expressing the philosophy of the enemy at this point in the show that definitely borrows the diction of progressiveness. The children in the audience are hearing Luke go, monsters are equal to us, and the children in the audience are going, no they're not, you're taking this too far, you're taking this political correctness thing way too far. Okay, maybe I'm being ungenerous. The fact that Tyson said that they were really nice to him and he's a good guy and we like him does kind of indicate that there's a degree of melancholy and nuance to it. We're intended to take away, oh, actually, maybe they're not all wrong after all. So we'll see how it resolves, but it's worth talking about, right? One important thing that I forgot to say when I first recorded this is that while the second post operates from the perspective of what stories will we be able to tell if we don't let the least generous allegorical interpretation of a work dominate analysis, and the first post operates from the perspective of sometimes what is intended to be speculative world building just imitates the worldview of small-minded people, I think there is an angle that wasn't really discussed in either, which is the phenomenon where a creator will be so determined to make an allegory that they fail to engage with the fruitful speculative elements of their own premise. I mentioned Detroit Become Human in this video, which is a game that has a lot of interesting elements, but its determination to make the android uprising into an allegory for race relations necessarily means that it never actually deals with perhaps the most interesting things about the concept of an android uprising. Humans who mistreat androids in that story are contextually bigots, and there's nothing more to read into it. There's never once a case where someone who likes beating up their androids is allowed to just kind of look bewildered and say, I don't know, man, I thought I was just beating up a toaster. I had no reason to think the device I bought was sentient. We're not playing with the actual philosophical consequences of the world that he wrote because we have to engage with it as though it's comparable to people hurting other people because they look different. Overall, I think that it would be a mistake to paint this as a binary between treating a text without any regard for real-world parallels and treating a text as directly allegorical. It's better to treat things as applicable than as representative. For example, Detroit Become Human has a character named Rose who directly says that she thinks androids fighting for their freedom is a lot like black people fighting for their freedom. She's wrong about that, but she's a character. She's allowed to be wrong. It's the fact that the story around her agrees that is the problem. Character said this is applicable, and story said this is allegory. I realize that I'm kind of treating the two Tumblr posts as conflicting ideologies, which might not be entirely fair. As far as I know, OP of Post 2 might agree with OP of Post 1. I personally tend to lean closer to the first Tumblr user's outlook than the second Tumblr user. As a writer, I myself have occasionally run into the situation of, oh no, what if it seems like I'm writing about this? And I typically use that feeling to either interrogate whether I'm going into it with unexamined biases, make changes that push the story in the direction of what I mean to say, or decide to leave it to reader interpretation and intelligence to see where elements of the plot do or don't apply to the real world. All of which I guess amounts to the same conclusion I always reach in conversations like these: just be able to perform comprehensive analysis of the things you like, the things you dislike, and especially the things you're making. You can't let it's just a story halt the discourse, and you also can't let one specific thread of analysis regarding the story halt the discourse. Greet the world with open arms. Greet the world with open arms. Okay, I'm gonna take this one to the board because I have a board now. I'm recording this video before the season 2 finale has aired, so I look forward to hearing a line where Luke is like, it's like the Underground Railroad. Or something of the sort, and I have to deal with that and just be like, oh, actually, maybe not. Maybe it is racism. Maybe it just is racism. Okay, so let's talk about monsters. Sure, okay. I should have done this in black, and I'm going to, the rest of it. Cool. Monsters have a dedicated slur. That slur is the word monster. When Percy uses it to refer to Tyson, he apologizes immediately, says that he shouldn't be saying that. And when Annabeth says it, Luke immediately goes, oh, we don't say that here. Now, what we can say is that maybe slur is too strong a word. They don't code it as an in-universe N-word. They don't go, whoa, 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 only we can say that, or any of the, like, Zootopia again stuff. It's treated more as an outdated classification term. Excluded from safe spaces. This is pretty much just about Camp Half-Blood, but yeah, Camp Half-Blood doesn't let monsters in. So if you are, like Tyson, a homeless monster who is getting attacked by other monsters regularly, you're simply out of luck. There's nothing in place for you. There's no community for you. You just kind of get attacked and be in pain. Oh, I'm falling. I almost fell. Arbitrary definition. Tyson calls this out pretty much immediately. He just kind of casually refers to Grover as a monster. Percy's kind of like, oh no, Grover is not a monster. He's a satyr, which is a nature spirit. That's different. How's that different? We are given no objective way to determine why it's different. It just kind of is. The character of Luke comes the closest to giving us a reason for the differentiation in his line where he refers to Tyson's mother not being human. That's almost something, but not quite. I just read a couple of Wikipedia articles about Greek mythology instead of perhaps more wisely checking what the Percy Jackson series specifically has to say about these things, but just to kind of establish what I got out of that, there is no objective reason that Tyson's designation should be different from Grover's designation. Seems to me that both satyrs and cyclopes are children of the gods, as Luke indicated. It seems like the only distinguishing factor is that satyrs are children of the gods who, as a species, are culturally aligned with demigods and centaurs, and cyclopes just kinda aren't. Now, the fun thing about the arbitrary definitions bullet point is that it's true for most things that someone can be bigoted against. It's true of race, it's true of disability. I feel like that sounded like I was saying disabilities aren't real. They're real, it's just the way that we classify disabilities is often heavily informed by one's ability to output work, and that's not always the most productive way to classify. Where I'm kind of landing on this right now is that monsters, as far as the way that they operate within the universe, it seems like it's a disability metaphor, but as far as the way that they are treated within the universe, it seems as if it's a racism allegory. I'm comfortable with ending the analysis there for now. Actually, I'm not going to call this analysis. I'd love to do a deeper dive into season 2 as a whole, but these are just my initial thoughts about this very specific aspect of season 2. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. Be there for the people in your community. Keep each other safe, keep each other fed, keep each other warm. Do your best out there, man. Look for the resources around you for people who are maybe less fortunate and maybe help out with those. Don't be a snitch. And have a great day. Cinderella, Ella, was she down on her luck? Or the witchcraft hang her head low? I could have danced all night. I could have danced all night. And still have begged for more. I could have spread my wings and done 1,000 things I've never done before. Consider yourself one of the family. We've taken to you so strong. It's clear we are going to get along. Consider yourself well, child of death, I walk alone, I've lost